day. Oh, thanks for this great opportunity to talk about the future of flight. That's something that I think we all have a great interest in, particularly in a country like Australia, where we all know the term and understand the meaning of tyranny of distance. The neat thing about my job is I got the greatest job in the world. Future of flight always captures public imagination, and airplanes are just cool, and they're fun to be working on. Since the birth of the jet age with the de Havilland comet, closely followed by the 707, the 747, and the A380, the public has always been fascinated by the developments in aviation, whether it's been faster, bigger, a combination of both, or really fast in the case of the Concorde. And these pictures really illustrate the changes that have gone on in our business over the years. At first, we started building airplanes because it was cool, because we had the technology, because we wanted to stretch the limits. And then later, as the years went on, gee what, we have to make money, the airlines have to make money. Now, the neat thing also about our job is what others dream we do. And some of our own dreams and some dreams of others include the SST, a supersonic transport, the blended wing body you see up there on the top of the screen. It was an amazing jump in fuel economy, but we didn't think the world was ready for 60 abreast economy yet. Down below, the Virgin Galactic is tapping the rich vein for travel experience with its Spaceship Two. And it's only 100,000 a pop, I think. And then there's the favorite of the newspapers in the lower right, the SCRAMJET, which you get from Sydney to London in a couple of hours. Whether you can afford it or not, it's a different question. So this is all good and exciting stuff, but a little closer to reality, there in the center is a plane we designed in the early part of this century. It's what we thought was going to be the next big jump in airplane performance, and it was called the Sonic Cruiser. And it was an airplane that would have cruised just under the speed of sound. And because of all the great technologies that we had been developing, it would have flew with the economics of today's generation of aircraft. But unfortunately, right after 9/11 happened, the value of speed kind of disappeared off the radar screen. And the airlines came back and told us, hey, look, what we really want you to do is take all those great technologies that you've developed for the Sonic Cruiser, put it in a more conventional aircraft, and give us a quantum leap in economics. And that's why we created the 787 Dreamliner. The dream is a reality. It's under construction right now in Seattle, and it will be the next step change in aviation, just like the 707 was or the 747. In today's market environment and market realities, you really have to solve multiple business cases. It's no longer just having the best technology, and it's no longer making sure you have a market that somebody will use it in. We have to solve the airline's business case. We have to solve the passenger's business case. We have to solve the bankers or financiers' business case. You have to solve the business case for the environment, and of course, Boeing and its partners. And that's what the 787 does. This airplane will bring 20% more fuel efficiency to the airlines, about a 10% reduction in operating costs, and it also will open up great new revenue possibilities with its cargo capacity. For the passengers, what we really tried to focus there on returning fun back into flying, and we've worked on new interiors, innovative interiors. For the bankers, it's about having an asset that's fungible and keeps its residual value. For the environment, it's about a quantum leap in terms of reducing emissions and noise. And for Boeing and its partners, of course, it's our opportunity to show off the great technologies that we've developed and what we have done. Now, 787 is when we say 787, we're really talking about a family of airplanes. The 787-8 will be the first airplane in service. It'll come into service about third quarter of next year, first flight in the fourth quarter this year. It's about the same size as a 767, and it flies with the same range and speed as a 47. The 787-9 is a stretch of the -8. It'll be about 20% bigger, and it'll come online in 2012. And then the Dash 3 is a intra-operation aircraft, intra-Japan, intra-North America, intra-Europe, shorter distance, and will carry in the 300, 330 type passenger class. That's kind of a niche market that we have for that aircraft. Now, this is kind of how Boeing sees the market over the next 20 years, about 28,000 new airplanes. It's a big market. And there you see on the left-hand side of the page, the market split between very large aircraft like the 747 and the A380, the twin aisles, which is the 777, the 787, and the A330, single aisle, which is the 737, 320, and then the regional jets there in purple. And while those are some interesting numbers, it's really the dollars that are important, and why. This is the chart I always use when I try to explain why Boeing went for the middle of the market and why we're building the 787 versus the A380. It's 42% of the market on the single aisle, but it's 45% of the market on the twin aisle, and that's where the most of the market is. That's where the quantities is. You know, it's not that we don't see there's a market for the A380. It's just that it's very small and it's a niche market. So that's really the main difference. And it also illustrates our differences in philosophy. We believe people want to go where they want to go, point to point, and not have to go through hubs. And this aircraft is designed to do just that. It can land on any airport without any changes to airport infrastructure, wherever the 767 can go. And that opens up a wide range of possibilities with the distance this airplane can travel. So how we've been doing in the market? Well, it's been pretty amazing. 58 customers for 896 firm orders. It's the greatest start in aviation history. It's bigger than any single aisle aircraft or regional aisle aircraft in terms of just pure numbers. It's got an amazing customer base. Up there you see all those logos. You'll see premium customers. You'll see low-cost carriers. You'll see charters. There's VIP aircraft. Just a great breadth. There's Asia, North America, Europe, a wide range of market interests. And so the market has really spoken. Now what this means, unfortunately for us, is that we're sold out in production through about 2016. And all the delivery spots we're offering now are out in that kind of time frame. But it's kind of amazing. Even in this environment that we see, we're still selling those slots. And we still have a strong interest for those aircraft. So where does all the efficiencies in this aircraft come from? Well, it comes from these main 4 items. There's a lot of different elements, but the engines account for about a third. It's the next generation leap in technology in terms of engines and their performance. It's our new aerodynamic models. We've been able to get improved performance out of the aerodynamics. It's the systems that you see. We've gone to an all-electric architecture inside the aircraft, which saves us a lot of energy and makes the aircraft more efficient. But the thing that everybody really gets excited about is the materials. This aircraft has over 50% composite carbon fiber materials by volume, and it's the main structure element for the aircraft. The fuselage is all carbon fiber, the wings carbon fiber, the empennage is carbon fiber. A lot of titanium also in the aircraft, probably more than any other aircraft. But the carbon fiber has been the leapfrog for this aircraft and has allowed us to do a lot of different neat things into the airplane. These big sections of fuselage that you see, they aren't hand laid up. They aren't panels bolted together. They're one-piece barrel sections. And that's been the big dramatic change for us. We always could have built a composite aircraft, but we never could produce it and make it producible, and this has been the big change. In terms of range, I mentioned the aircraft, the 787-8 and the 9 both have the same range and speed as the 747 and the 777, and again, it can connect a lot of different points and also bypass hubs. I talked a little bit about trying to improve the passenger's experience and try to return a little bit of fun to flying. We spent a lot of time creating this interior of this aircraft. It has the largest bins. It'll have the widest aisles, better air quality, more headroom, bigger windows. The windows are 60% bigger than today's airplane windows. But the thing that I think really catches everybody's attention has been the improvements we've been able to make into the altitude and humidity into the cabin. Because today's aircraft, when you're flying long distance, you kind of feel like you're at 8,000 feet. And that's why when you fly for a really long time, like 10 hours, you're really exhausted when you get off the aircraft. Because this aircraft is made out of carbon fiber, we're able to pressurize the aircraft down to about 5,000 feet. The reason we can do that is because carbon fiber doesn't corrode, it doesn't fatigue, and with metal it'll contract and expand and it'll reduce the life of the aircraft. But by lowering that cabin altitude to 5,000 feet, which doesn't seem all that great, we've done a lot of testing on young, innocent college students in pressure chambers. We've been able to learn where the knee in the curve is, and that really is going to make a big improvement in the way you feel. And what this also does is let us increase the humidity in the cabin. Again, increasing humidity from like 5% to 20% doesn't seem like a lot, but it is a lot if you're on an airplane for a very long time. And again, because carbon doesn't corrode, we can put more humidity into the cabin. In terms of the environment, of course, when you use less fuel, you're going to produce less emissions. And the new engines also help us reduce the amount of noise in this aircraft, and the materials are a lot safer and not as hazardous. The 20% reduction in fuel means 20% reduction in carbon emissions. Just a quantum leap in improvement. It's also 28% below the 2008 industry limits for NOx, and a 60% smaller noise footprint than today's flying aircraft. Another big jump. And here you kind of see what that kind of means. If we use 85 decibels as a noise contour, which is kind of a standard measurement, you kind of see the airport here in Sydney, where we go from the A340 to the 330 to the 67. Then all of a sudden you go see the 787 noise footprint. The 85 dB level stays all within the airport property. Again, for an airport like Sydney, that's a really big deal. It'll be a big deal at Heathrow too. The engines, I mentioned the engines, a lot quieter. This is no engine bleed system. We got rid of the bleed air in the airplanes. But the thing that really catches people's attention on the engines is this is the first aircraft where the engine types are interchangeable. So if there's two engine suppliers on the airplane, GE and Rolls, and if for some reason, let's say a bank has to repossess a whole bunch of 787s from an airline, and those engines are Rolls-Royce, if they had to change them to GE, they could. And it would be just a minimal amount of change, and it's mostly software, quite frankly. And the reason we did that was for the banks. The banks really were involved in the design of this aircraft. Before we'd always, like on the 777, we always got all the airlines' input before we designed an aircraft. And this time we did something different. We got the airlines and the banks' input. Because after 9/11, we thought that the banks might be the real owners of this aircraft in terms of the sheer numbers of it. And we wanted to make sure that they thought this was a credit-worthy asset and would keep its residual value. And they just wanted one engine on the aircraft, one engine type. And that was because there would be no bad engine, right? There couldn't be a bad one, or a preferred one over one or the other. And by making the engines interchangeable, even though I don't think it's ever going to really happen, it gave them the comfort that they wanted in terms of the asset. This is a picture of our partners around the globe. You probably heard a lot about our partners plan. You've probably heard a lot that we're late on the airplane. We are not where we want to be. And the good news for us is it hasn't been a design issue. We haven't had a design issue on this aircraft. What it's been is a supply chain issue. Because we're building this aircraft different, we're building a lot of parts around the world, and they're fully stuffed and assembled, and they come into Seattle for final assembly. That's really been a big change to our supply chain model, and we've really stretched the limits of it. And so that's why we're late, and that's what we're working on, trying to satisfy our customers. We apologize to our customers profusely. I know Qantas is on afterwards. But we're going to get the airplane right. And that's also the other thing our customers have told us. They said, hey, if this airplane's late, make sure we'd rather have it late and right than for you guys to take any shortcuts. And we're working on that, and we're going to produce that plane for them. Just kind of out of interest, there's a little bit of Australia on every single 787, just as there is 777. The movable trailing edge that you see back there are built down in Hawker de Havilland in Melbourne, and the rudder on the 777 is built in it's built in Melbourne today. It'll be built in Bankstown tomorrow. Final assembly. So we're going through final assembly. We have 3 aircraft in flow, and we're rapidly getting more aircraft in flow. We'll start. First flight, I think I said, was going to be in the 4th quarter of this year, so we'll have power on probably in the next couple of months, and that's moving briskly. And we had the rollout on 7807, which I know doesn't translate in Australia. I think that's 877, but it sounded good to the Americans anyway. But the 787 is not a dream. It is here. It's going to be a great aircraft. The fundamental technologies are very sound and proven. We've been flying carbon fiber on aircraft for 30, 40 years. The 777 empennage is all carbon fiber, made here in Australia. It's been flying since 1994. The airplane will be efficient and effective for the airlines, and it'll address all the industry and public concern about the environment better than any other aircraft. And the passengers are really going to notice a difference, and we think that's why it's going to be a winner. And that is it. How did I do? Thank you.
Thanks very much. I was just wondering, this is going to bring a lot more people into our airports. What are the airports going to do to assist with baggage handling, immigration, customs, etc., check-ins, etc.?
Well, it's not going to bring any more people into it than would have been otherwise. I mean, the demand for seats on airplanes has been pretty steady over the last 40 years, pretty much mirroring the growth in GDP worldwide. And whereas it is an important issue about infrastructure, and it does need to be worked, this plane per se isn't going to change that. Now, on the 380, there are some issues, and I know the airports have been working them because of the sheer numbers that are coming off on those aircraft. I don't know how many. It depends on what configuration the 380 has, whether it's 600 people or 400 people. It depends on the configuration on the inside, but it's going to be a lot bigger impact when it lands. But the 87 will be, it's about the same size as 67, so it's not going to be a sudden, oh my gosh, there's an 87 here kind of impact in terms of infrastructure.
Thank you, Craig. Yes, in fact, we have 2 hands over here. We'll start with you.
John O'Neill from Tourism New South Wales. 2 questions, Craig. One is the pilot shortage, Boeing's view on that, and what can be done about it. And secondly, I noticed that the regional jet numbers are forecast to diminish comparatively significantly, and interested in Boeing's view on non-major city travel within Australia, jet or otherwise. Thanks.
Well, let's see if I can answer them. The pilot shortage is a big deal. And what Boeing is doing is we have a company that we own called Alteon that trains pilot. And I think we're running over 100% capacity on our simulators right now. And so we're doing all we can to try to address that shortfall. And but it is a worldwide issue. And you see airlines trying to steal pilots wherever they can from around the world. What was the second question? Regional jets. I'm not sure about the regional jets locally in terms of the growth, any changes in growth there. That I know the numbers are big on regional jets. When we talk about regional jets, we're kind of talking about 90 seats and below. It'll be a large segment in terms of numbers, and it's really the big feeder for the hubs these days around the world. I don't think I answered it, but that was all I had.
Okay. And we have time for just the one more, and I think it's this other gentleman here.
Craig, hi. Justin from Travel Weekly. Could you go into a bit more detail about how you design planes now for the banks to repossess, going into economic gloom, perhaps?
I'm sorry, you're gonna have to repeat the last part. How do we design planes to do what?
In order for the banks to make it easier to repossess them.
Oh well, I didn't really mean to imply that. But that was just an example I used in terms of why banks have issues. What we've done with the aircraft is we've standardized the options in the aircraft. If you look at a 777 option catalog in terms of all the options you could pick out of a catalog and put into an airplane, we got rid of about 70% of those options. And we didn't take anything away from the airlines. What we did is we made those standard. And by making those standard and more standardizing the aircraft, it's done a couple things. One, it's made it easier for the airlines in terms of getting the options selected and getting on with it. We've reduced the cost of the options because if you have the same option in every aircraft, it's actually cheaper for us in the long run. And then, of course, the banks like the fact that they've got a standardized product and it's more valuable. It's funny. You look at the old 747s. This is probably terrible. I hope I don't see this in the paper the next day. When you look at the old 747s, you can go into the cockpit and find 30 different ways you could put water cups holders in a cockpit. I mean, it was that kind of craziness in terms of the options that were taking place. And what we did, though, by eliminating a lot of those options and making them standard on the aircraft, we did make sure that the airlines had the ability to brand themselves on the interior. So things that were really important between the airline and the passenger, those are still in the option catalog. And we've built this wonderful facility in Everett, Washington for the airlines to come up and see and touch all these different options and select those.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig.
Cheers.